Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Lies. Dominic Vanguard stood at the window of his home office, overlooking the sprawling grounds of his Tennessee estate. At 45, he was at the pinnacle of success, founder of Vanguard Construction, the most prestigious high-security building firm in the Southeast. His company didn't just build structures. They created impenetrable fortresses disguised as architectural marvels. From government facilities to private compounds for the ultra-wealthy, Dominic's expertise in security integration made him a legend in exclusive circles. The rain outside reflected his mood. Dark, intense, contemplative. He sipped his whiskey, watching lightning illuminate the professionally landscaped gardens. 20 years of marriage to Bianca, 2 children, and a company worth 9 figures. He had everything a man could want. Yet lately, something fell off. Bianca had been distant for months. Their once passionate relationship had cooled, with her constantly occupied by her charity foundation that specialized in rehabilitating troubled youth. When Dominic questioned the late nights, the whispered phone calls, she dismissed his concerns with practiced ease. "You're being paranoid, Dom," she'd say. "The gala season requires extra hours. You know how these donors are. They need constant attention." Their children were equally elusive. 17-year-old Cassidy spent most of her time with her equestrian team, while 19-year-old Rowan had just finished his first year at Vanderbilt, studying architecture to follow in his father's footsteps. A knock interrupted Dominic's thoughts. His house manager, Trent Moss, entered with his typical military precision, a habit from his 20 years in Special Forces before Dominic hired him to oversee the estate and family security. "Sir, Mr. Huxley has arrived." Dominic nodded. "Send him in." Ambrose Huxley was Dominic's oldest friend and the head of Vanguard's legal department. The men had met during Dominic's military service, where both had served in an elite unit specializing in infiltration and extraction. Those skills had proven invaluable when building Dominic's empire. Ambrose entered, his imposing 6'4" frame filling the doorway. "We need to talk about the Prometheus Project." His voice was grave. The Prometheus Project was Vanguard's most classified undertaking, a new security system that could predict and neutralize threats through advanced AI. The government contract was worth billions, but only a handful of people knew the details. "What's happened?" Dominic straightened, immediately alert. "Someone's been accessing the files from inside your network." Dominic's expression hardened. Security breaches weren't just business concerns. They were personal affronts. "Who?" "That's the problem. The access point keeps shifting, but it's definitely coming from someone with privileged credentials. Find them." Dominic's voice was ice. "Use whatever resources you need." As Ambrose left, Dominic felt the familiar calm that preceded his most decisive actions. In his military days, they called it the stillness, that moment when everything became crystal clear, when emotions retreated and pure strategy remained. That evening, the family gathered for their weekly dinner, a tradition Dominic insisted upon. Bianca glowed in an emerald dress that accentuated her athletic figure. At 43, she still turned heads, her golden brown hair perfectly styled, her smile practiced and poised. Before her marriage, she'd been a behavioral psychologist working with troubled youth, which had inspired her foundation. Cassidy picked at her food, her dark eyes, so like Dominic's, downcast. Rowan maintained polite conversation about his summer internship at a rival construction firm, something Dominic had encouraged to broaden his son's perspective. "How's the Callaway Foundation doing, darling?" Dominic asked Bianca, watching her reaction carefully. "Wonderfully. Hudson's been invaluable with the new program." Hudson Reeves, the Foundation's co-director, a name that had appeared with increasing frequency in Bianca's conversations. "I've yet to meet this miracle worker," Dominic remarked casually. "Perhaps I should stop by the Foundation tomorrow." A flash of something, alarm, crossed Bianca's face before she recovered. "He's traveling to the Chicago office tomorrow. Budget meetings." The subtle tightening around Cassidy's eyes didn't escape Dominic's notice. His daughter knew something. After dinner, he found her in the stables, brushing down her favorite mare, Tempest. "Your mother seems busy these days," he said, leaning against the stall door. Cassidy's movements faltered briefly. The foundation's important to her. And is Hudson Reeves important to her as well? The brush stopped completely. Cassidy's voice dropped to a whisper. "Dad, don't ask me that." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to be in the middle." Her eyes met his, filled with conflict. "Please." Dominic nodded, respecting her position while filing away her reaction. "I understand, sweetheart. But remember, whatever happens, I'm still your father." Later that night, he accessed the estate's security system from his private terminal. Every corner of the property was monitored, a necessity given his high-profile clients and the sensitive information he possessed. He scrolled through Bianca's comings and goings over the past month, noting patterns, discrepancies between her stated whereabouts and reality. Then he called Preston Baker, head of his private security team. "I need surveillance on Hudson Reeves, and I need it discreet." The stillness was settling over him again. If his suspicions proved correct, the response would be calculated, precise, and absolutely devastating. Dominic Vanguard didn't just eliminate threats. He dismantled them so thoroughly that recovery was impossible. Chapter 2: Shadows and Whispers. 3 days later, Preston delivered a folder to Dominic's office. The thick manila envelope landed on the mahogany desk with the weight of demolition charges. "It's all there, sir." Photos, recordings, financial trails. Dominic's expression remained neutral as he thumbed through the contents. Hudson Reeves was indeed having an affair with Bianca. That much was clear from the intimate photos taken at a lakeside cabin registered to a shell company. But what caught Dominic's attention was a series of documents showing large transfers from the Callaway Foundation to offshore accounts. "They're embezzling from the charity?" Dominic asked, his voice deceptively calm. Preston shook his head. "Not exactly. They're using the foundation to launder money, but the real operation is much bigger." He pointed to a document. "Reeves has connections to Obsidian Technologies." The name sent ice through Dominic's veins. Obsidian was Vanguard's chief competitor for the Prometheus project, a company rumored to have ties to foreign intelligence agencies. "Bianca has access to my home office," Dominic said, the implications clear. "And your son has been meeting with Reeves too?" Preston added quietly, sliding across another photo. It showed Rowan and Hudson in deep conversation at a coffee shop near Vanderbilt. The betrayal crystallized in Dominic's mind. Not just an affair, industrial espionage. His wife and possibly his son were selling him out to competitors, undermining everything he'd built. "Continue monitoring. Tell no one else about this." As Preston left, Dominic unlocked his private safe and removed a small black notebook. Inside were contingency plans for various catastrophic scenarios, including family betrayal. He'd created these protocols years ago, not out of paranoia, but pragmatism. In his line of work, trust was a liability unless backed by verification. That evening, he observed his family with new awareness. Bianca's laugh seemed hollow, her affectionate touch on his arm calculated. Rowan's questions about the Prometheus project now carried sinister undertones. Only Cassidy seemed genuinely troubled, her eyes constantly darting between her parents, shoulders tense with unspoken knowledge. After dinner, Dominic retreated to his study, activating enhanced security protocols on all his devices. Then he made a call to Ambrose. "I need you to prepare the Lazarus protocol." Quietly, there was a pause on the line. "Are you certain?" "That's scorched earth, Dom. Just get everything in place. I'll give the final order when I'm ready." The Lazarus protocol was named for its ability to resurrect Dominic from complete destruction. It would transfer control of his assets to a network of shell companies, effectively removing his wealth and power from anyone attempting to claim them through legal channels, including family members. For the next week, Dominic played his role perfectly, the oblivious husband, the trusting father. He feigned late nights at the office while gathering evidence, building his case methodically. The stillness never left him now. It was his constant companion. On Friday evening, Cassidy received a call while the family was gathered in the living room. Dominic watched as she stepped onto the terrace, her posture tense. When she returned, her face was pale. "Everything okay, honey?" Bianca asked. "Just team stuff," Cassidy mumbled, but her eyes briefly met Dominic's, filled with turmoil. Later, he found a note slipped under his office door. "Dad, we need to talk. Not at home. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Tempest Stable. Please come alone." The next day, Dominic arrived at the private equestrian center where Cassidy boarded her competition horse. He found her in the tack room, nervously polishing an already gleaming saddle. "I overheard Mom on the phone," she began without preamble. She said, "The transfer happens Monday. After that, he'll have nothing." "Dad, I think she's planning something terrible." "Did she mention who she was talking to?" Dominic asked, his voice gentle despite the rage building inside. "Hudson, I think." "And?" Cassidy hesitated. Rowan was there too. The confirmation of his son's involvement cut deep, but Dominic maintained his composure. "You're doing the right thing, Cassidy. Mom's making a huge mistake. You deserve to know." Tears welled in her eyes. "I found something in her desk." She reached into her riding jacket and pulled out an envelope. "Everything you thought about our family is a lie." With trembling hands, she gave him the envelope. Inside were transfer authorizations for the Prometheus project files, signed by Bianca using an emergency power of attorney Dominic had established years ago in case of his incapacitation. There was also a medical report with falsified evidence suggesting Dominic was mentally unstable. "They're going to have you committed, Dad. On Monday." Hudson's got connections at Westlake Psychiatric. Once you're declared incompetent, Mom gets control of everything. The stillness in Dominic hardened to steel. "Does your mother know you found this?" Cassidy shook her head. "I put everything back. But Rowan almost caught me. I think he suspects I know." "Listen carefully," Dominic said, his tactical mind already formulating counters. "Go back home. Act normal. If they ask where you were, say you were practicing for next week's competition." "What are you going to do?" Dominic tucked the envelope into his jacket. "I'm going to call the police." As his daughter left, Dominic made the call, not to the local authorities, who might be influenced by Bianca's social connections, but to an FBI contact who owed him several favors. Industrial espionage involving classified government contracts fell squarely under federal jurisdiction. "I'll need protective custody for my daughter," he concluded. "The others are flight risks." By sunset, federal agents had seized computers from the Callaway Foundation and Hudson Reeves' residence. Bianca and Rowan returned from a shopping trip to find FBI agents waiting at the estate. The look of shock on his wife's face, as she was read her rights, was something Dominic would remember forever. "You can't do this!" she screamed as they led her to a vehicle. "Dominic, tell them this is a mistake." He watched him passively. "No mistakes, Bianca. Only consequences." Rowan, handcuffed beside his mother, stared at his father with naked hatred. "You're going to regret this. You have no idea what's really happening." "I know enough," Dominic replied, turning away as they were driven off. Later, as federal agents combed through his home office, with his full cooperation, Cassidy approached, her eyes red from crying. "I never wanted this to happen," she whispered. Dominic put his arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes we don't choose the battle, Cassidy, but we always choose how we fight." Chapter 3: The First Counterattack. The federal investigation proceeded swiftly, building an airtight case against Bianca and Hudson. The evidence was damning. Communications with Obsidian Technologies, planned transfers of classified information, the falsified medical reports intended to have Dominic committed. Rowan's involvement appeared peripheral. He'd been manipulated rather than acting as a primary conspirator. Still, he'd known about the plot and chosen his mother's side. Dominic moved Cassidy to a secure apartment while the investigation continued, ensuring her education wasn't disrupted. He filed for divorce immediately, his legal team working to freeze Bianca's assets and deny her access to the considerable wealth she'd planned to steal. 2 weeks after the arrests, Ambrose brought disturbing news during their daily briefing at Vanguard headquarters. Bianca's attorney is floating an insanity defense. They're claiming she was coerced by Reeves, that he manipulated her psychologically. Dominic's expression darkened. "And Rowan, cooperating with prosecutors against his mother and Reeves. He's angling for immunity. The betrayal by his son still burned, but Dominic had expected this move. Rowan had always taken the path of least resistance. Let him talk, Dominic said, but initiate the trust dissolution. This would revoke Rowan's inheritance and his future position at Vanguard. The boy would keep his education fund. Dominic wasn't cruel, but would never access the family fortune or company leadership. What about the psychiatric angle Bianca's pushing? Ambrose asked. If she convinces a jury she wasn't mentally competent, she won't. Dominic's voice was steel. Because tomorrow, you're going to deliver this to the prosecution. He handed Ambrose a flash drive. Sessions between Bianca and her previous therapist. She was recording them as research for her foundation. The woman discusses her manipulative tendencies in detail, how she enjoys the power of controlling others. Ambrose looked uncomfortable. How did you get these? Bianca's cloud storage wasn't as secure as she thought. Dominic shrugged, and she never imagined I'd access her research archives. Too technical for me, she always said. The flash drive would destroy any insanity defense. Bianca's calculated nature, recorded in her own therapy sessions, would reveal her as the mastermind, not the victim. That evening, Dominic received an unexpected visitor at his temporary residence, a luxury condo in downtown Nashville. Agent Lynette Torres of the FBI stood at his door, her expression grave. We have a situation, Mr. Vanguard. Your son has disappeared. Dominic invited her in, maintaining his composure. Disappeared how? I thought he was under surveillance. He gave his protective detail the slip this afternoon. Before he vanished, he accessed a safety deposit box at First Tennessee Bank. What was in it? We don't know yet. The warrant's still processing. She studied him carefully. Any idea where he might go? Dominic considered the question. Rowan had always been methodical, even as a child. He wouldn't run without resources and a destination. Check property holdings under my maternal grandmother's maiden name, Keller. There's a hunting cabin in the Smoky Mountains. Officially, it doesn't exist in my portfolio. Agent Torres raised an eyebrow. You keep properties off your books? I maintain privacy contingencies, Agent. In my business, they're essential. After she left, Dominic accessed his secure terminal. If Rowan had fled to the cabin, he'd triggered the perimeter sensors. Sure enough, the system showed an entry at 4:17 p.m. Dominic considered alerting Agent Torres, then decided against it. This was family business now. He made one call to Preston. I need a secure vehicle and equipment. Full package. No electronic trail. 3 hours later, Dominic drove through the mountain darkness, a duffel containing tactical gear on the passenger seat. The stillness had become absolute now, a perfect clarity of purpose. Rowan had made his choice. Tonight, he would understand the consequences. The cabin appeared dark as Dominic approached on foot, using night vision goggles to navigate the dense forest. He bypassed his own security systems with practiced ease, entering through a hidden access point in the cellar. He moved silently through the space he knew intimately, hearing movement on the second floor. Ascending the stairs with practiced stealth, he found Rowan in the study, frantically sorting through documents spread across a large desk. Looking for something? Dominic asked, his voice causing his son to jerk upright. Jesus, Rowan gasped, reaching toward his waistband. I wouldn't, Dominic warned, the green laser sight from his pistol appearing on Rowan's chest. Hands where I can see them. Rowan complied, his face a mixture of fear and defiance. You don't understand what's happening. Then enlighten me. Dominic kept the weapon trained steadily. Why are you working with the people trying to destroy me? Because you're not who you think you are. Rowan blurted. Mom found out the truth about your past, about what really happened in Kosovo. The mention of Kosovo sent an electric current through Dominic, but his expression remained impassive. What exactly do you think you know? That Operation Blackfish wasn't a rescue mission. It was an assassination. Those diplomats were scientists working on biological weapons. You weren't saving anyone. You were eliminating witnesses. Dominic's mind raced. Kosovo was classified beyond top secret, a mission from his military days that officially never happened. How could Bianca know about it? Where did your mother get this information? Hudson has contacts in military intelligence. They've been building a case for years. The only reason you haven't been arrested is because of your government contracts. Dominic lowered his weapon slightly. And you believe this? I saw the evidence. Rowan insisted. Photos, mission logs. Forgeries. Dominic cut him off. Think, Rowan. If any of this were true, why would your mother plan to have me committed rather than turning this evidence over to authorities? Uncertainty flickered across Rowan's face. Because there is no evidence, Dominic continued. Only fabrications created by Hudson to manipulate your mother, and you, into betraying me. Obsidian Technologies wants the Prometheus project. This was industrial espionage wrapped in a convincing lie. Rowan shook his head stubbornly. You're lying. Mom wouldn't. Your mother recorded her own therapy sessions, Dominic interrupted. Sessions where she discussed, in detail, her enjoyment of manipulating others. Did you know that before she met me, she was dismissed from her clinical practice for inappropriate relationships with patients? The color drained from Rowan's face. That's not true. Those are the documents you should be looking for. Not fictional war crimes, but the real history of the woman who raised you. Dominic's voice softened slightly. She's a brilliant psychologist, Rowan. That made her an exceptional manipulator. For a moment, doubt clouded his son's eyes. Then his jaw hardened. Even if that's true, you're still a killer. I've seen how you look at people, calculating, measuring. There's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me, Dominic replied calmly. I simply see the world as it is, not as I wish it to be. He gestured toward the scattered papers. Have you found what you're looking for? Rowan's shoulders slumped. The backup drive. Mom said it would be here. Proof of everything. There is no drive, son. Just another lie to keep you dancing on strings. Dominic holstered his weapon. The FBI will be here within the hour. You have a choice. Come with me now and cooperate fully, or stay and face federal agents alone. Rowan stared at him, conflicted. If I go with you, what happens? You tell the truth. All of it. In exchange, I'll ensure you avoid prison. But understand this. You will never be part of Vanguard. Your inheritance is revoked. You'll have your education fund and nothing more. And if I refuse? Dominic's gaze was unflinching. Then you're no longer my son. The words hung between them like a physical barrier. Finally, Rowan nodded. I'll go with you. A wise choice, Dominic replied, feeling no triumph, only a cold certainty that the first phase of his response was complete. As they drove back toward Nashville, Rowan stared out the window, his face illuminated occasionally by passing headlights. Did you ever really love us? He asked suddenly. Or were we just part of your cover story? Dominic considered the question carefully. I loved the family I thought I had. And now I see clearly. Love requires truth. Without that foundation, it's just another tactical position. Rowan fell silent again, perhaps finally understanding the man his father truly was, not cruel, but absolutely uncompromising in his principles. By morning, Rowan was in federal custody, giving his statement. Dominic returned to Vanguard headquarters, where Ambrose waited with an update. Bianca's lawyer reached out. They want a deal. Dominic poured himself a whiskey, despite the early hour. No deals. Dom, listen. No. Deals. His voice left no room for discussion. She attempted to destroy me, Ambrose. Tried to use my own children against me. The response will be proportionate. And what's proportionate in your view? Dominic gazed out at the Nashville skyline, the stillness within him complete and perfect. Total destruction. Nothing less. Chapter 4. Calculated Moves. 3 months after the arrests, Dominic sat in the federal courthouse, watching impassively as Hudson Reeves accepted a plea deal. 20 years for espionage. Testimony against Bianca in exchange for avoiding life imprisonment. The man wouldn't meet Dominic's eyes as marshals led him away. Bianca's trial was scheduled to begin the following week. Her insanity defense had collapsed under the weight of her own recorded therapy sessions, forcing her attorneys to pursue a different strategy, claiming she was coerced by Reeves and feared for her life. Outside the courtroom, Dominic encountered Rowan for the first time since that night at the cabin. His son looked diminished somehow, shoulders hunched in an ill-fitting suit. His immunity deal had spared him prison, but left him with a felony record that would follow him forever. "Congratulations," Rowan said bitterly. "You've won. Destroyed everyone." Dominic regarded him coolly. "Actions have consequences. You chose yours." "Mom wasn't lying about everything," Rowan persisted, lowering his voice. "I've been contacted by someone who knows about Blackfish." A flicker of surprise crossed Dominic's face before he controlled it. "More fabrications won't help your mother's case. This isn't about her case. It's about you." Rowan leaned closer. "The name Velasquez mean anything to you?" Dominic's expression remained neutral, but inwardly, alarm sounded. Miguel Velasquez had been the intelligence officer attached to the Kosovo operation, a man presumed dead for over 2 decades. "Whoever's feeding you information is playing you for a fool," Dominic replied evenly. "Focus on rebuilding your life instead of chasing ghosts." As he walked away, Dominic's mind raced. If Velasquez was alive and talking, the implications were severe. The Kosovo operation had been sanctioned at the highest levels, but the official records had been purged. Anyone revealing its details would face tremendous risk. Back at Vanguard headquarters, Dominic initiated a Level 1 security protocol, restricting access to all sensitive projects. Then he summoned Preston to his office. "I need information on Miguel Velasquez." Quietly, Preston, ever efficient, nodded without asking questions. Dominic next called Cassidy, who had recently returned to the family estate. Since the arrests, she maintained minimal contact with her mother and brother, focusing instead on her equestrian competitions. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" he asked when she answered. "All good. Just finished practicing with Tempest." Her voice sounded lighter these days, unburdened by family secrets. "I'm thinking of selling the estate," he said, watching her reaction through the video call. "Too many memories." Cassidy considered this. "Where would we go?" "I've been looking at properties in Colorado. Mountain views, private stables. You could train year-round with the right facilities." Her eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing, Dad." After the call, Dominic activated his secure terminal, accessing a hidden directory of contingency plans. The Lazarus Protocol had been his financial safeguard against Bianca's attempted takeover. Now he needed something more comprehensive. The Phoenix Protocol, designed for complete disengagement and rebuilding. The estate sale would be the first step, not because of memories, but because the property might be compromised if Velasquez truly was alive and targeting him. The Colorado property already existed, purchased through a shell corporation years ago, its connection to Dominic buried under layers of legal protection. That evening, Preston delivered his preliminary findings on Velasquez. Facial recognition got a hit at Mexico City International Airport 3 weeks ago. The system's only 87% confident. The subject has undergone significant changes. Substantial weight loss, possible surgical alterations. Associates? Working on it. But there's something else. Preston hesitated. Someone accessed Rowan's student email account from an IP address in Mexico City the day before he mentioned Velasquez to you. The pieces aligned in Dominic's mind. "They're using my son to get to me." "Looks that way, sir." Dominic considered his options. The Prometheus project was weeks away from final government approval, a crucial moment when Vanguard would be under intense scrutiny. Any hint of past wrongdoing could derail the contract and destroy the company. Increase security on Cassidy. Full protection detail, 24/7. And Rowan. Dominic's expression hardened. Maintain distant surveillance only. "If they're using him as bait, I won't interfere yet." Over the next 2 weeks, Dominic accelerated his plans while maintaining a facade of business as usual. Bianca's trial began, with media camped outside the courthouse daily. She appeared composed, dressed conservatively, playing the role of a deceived wife rather than a conspirator. Dominic attended the proceedings each day, his face impassive as Hudson Reeves testified about their affair and the industrial espionage plot. When asked about Bianca's involvement, Reeves portrayed her as a reluctant participant, manipulated by his expertise in psychological coercion. During a recess, Assistant U.S. Attorney Madeline Zhao approached Dominic. "Mr. Vanguard, we have concerns about Reeves' testimony. He's deviating from his initial statements, meaning he's minimizing your ex-wife's involvement, suggesting she was another victim rather than a willing participant." Zhao looked troubled. "Has there been contact between them?" "That would violate their bail conditions," Dominic noted. "Indeed it would, which is why I'm asking if you have any alternative channels of information." Dominic understood immediately. The prosecution suspected tampering but couldn't prove it. "I'll see what I can discover." That night, he instructed Preston to increase surveillance on Bianca's attorney, Wesley Torres, a flamboyant defender known for ethical flexibility. Within days, they had evidence. Torres had facilitated communication between Bianca and Reeves, coordinating their testimony. Dominic delivered this information to AUSA Zhao personally, watching her expression shift from professional detachment to cold anger. "This changes things," she said, reviewing the photos and recorded conversations. "Judge Reynolds takes witness tampering very seriously." "I would prefer this evidence remain anonymous," Dominic replied. Zhao nodded. "Understood. We'll find an alternative justification for the investigation." 2 days later, Torres was removed from Bianca's case, and Judge Reynolds revoked her bail for violation of communication restrictions. The look of stunned betrayal on Bianca's face as marshals led her from the courtroom satisfied something deep in Dominic's core. Meanwhile, Preston reported increased activity surrounding Rowan. He's meeting regularly with a woman named Sofia Diaz. Background checks show she entered the country from Mexico 3 weeks ago on a student visa. Velasquez's contact, Dominic surmised. What are they discussing? "We can't get close enough for audio without risk of detection." But Rowan visited a storage facility yesterday. Removed a large case. Dominic frowned. "What kind of case?" Dimensions suggest document storage. Heavy-duty, waterproof. The pieces shifted in Dominic's mind. Had Bianca hidden actual evidence about Kosovo? It seemed unlikely. The operation had been too classified, the records too thoroughly destroyed. Unless, check military archives for any reference to Operation Blackfish, he instructed Preston. Focus on personnel lists. I need to know if anyone besides Velasquez might have survived. As Preston left, Dominic's secure phone buzzed with a message from an encrypted source. Phoenix ready for activation. Timeline? He replied, 72 hours. Prepare transfer protocols. The Phoenix protocol was nearly complete. Vanguard's most valuable assets have been discreetly moved to new holding companies. The Colorado property was fully staffed and secured. Cassidy's transfer to an elite equestrian academy near the new estate had been arranged. All that remained was to deal with the Velasquez situation and ensure Bianca received the full measure of justice for her betrayal. The next morning, Dominic received an unexpected call from Rowan. "We need to meet," his son said without preamble. "It's about Kosovo." "There's nothing to discuss," Dominic replied coldly. "I have emission logs, the real ones, and I know what really happened to the scientists' families." Dominic's blood ran cold. The families had been collateral damage, unavoidable casualties in an operation that had prevented a biological weapon from reaching terrorist hands. That information was supposed to be buried forever. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. "Meet me at the riverfront park. 4 o'clock. Come alone." Rowan hung up. Dominic immediately called Preston. "Track Rowan's movements. Full surveillance, but maintain distance. I want to know everyone he's in contact with." At 3:30, Dominic headed toward the riverfront park, taking a circuitous route to identify potential surveillance. He spotted 2 men who moved with military precision. Professionals, not amateurs. Velasquez wasn't taking chances. Preston's voice came through his earpiece. "Sir, we've identified Sofia Diaz. She's not a student. She's Velasquez's daughter. Birth records confirm it." The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't about national security or classified operations. This was personal, revenge for a man who believed himself betrayed. Dominic approached the meeting spot carefully, scanning for threats. Rowan sat alone on a bench overlooking the Cumberland River, a manila envelope beside him. His son looked up as Dominic approached, his expression a mixture of anger and uncertainty. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Rowan said. "You mentioned Kosovo. That got my attention." Dominic remained standing, maintaining tactical awareness of his surroundings. "Where's Sophia?" Surprise flashed across Rowan's face. "How do you? Miguel Velasquez's daughter. Did she tell you that part when she was feeding you information?" Rowan's expression confirmed his ignorance. "She said she was a journalist investigating war crimes. And you believed her because it fit the narrative you wanted, that your father is a monster." Dominic's voice remained even. "What's in the envelope?" Rowan picked it up reluctantly. "Mission logs. Photos. Evidence that the scientists in Kosovo weren't developing weapons. They were creating vaccines. And their families weren't collateral damage. They were deliberately eliminated to cover up the operation." "May I?" Dominic held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Rowan surrendered the envelope. Dominic opened it, examining the contents quickly but thoroughly. The documents looked authentic, military formatting, appropriate clearance markings. But subtle inconsistencies revealed the truth. "These are forgeries," he said finally. "Good ones, but forgeries nonetheless." "You're lying," Rowan insisted. "The operation code on these documents is XB 7793. Blackfish's actual designation was KV 4218. Dominic tapped another page. "This signature from General Westmore? He wasn't involved in Blackfish. He was in Afghanistan during this period." Doubt crept into Rowan's expression. "Sophia said these came directly from military archives. Sophia Diaz wants revenge because she believes I'm responsible for her father's presumed death. She's using you to get to me." Dominic handed the envelope back. Velasquez disappeared during Blackfish. The official report listed him as killed in action, but no body was recovered. He believes he was abandoned. Was he? Dominic's face remained impassive. The mission parameters were clear. No extraction if the primary objective was compromised. Velasquez knew the risks. "So you left him to die," Rowan said flatly. "I followed orders. The mission prevented a biological weapon from reaching terrorist cells." Dominic's voice hardened. "The same mission your mother and Hudson Reeves tried to use against me. And now Velasquez is continuing their work through you." Rowan looked away, conflicted. "What happens now?" "That depends on you." Dominic nodded toward the envelope. "Sophia will expect a report on our meeting. Tell her I confirmed everything. Tell her I'm frightened of exposure." "Why would I do that?" "Because you've finally realized you're being used." Again, Dominic's gaze was unwavering. "Help me in this, Rowan, or spend the rest of your life as someone else's pawn." For a long moment, father and son stared at each other, years of complicated history between them. Finally, Rowan nodded. "What do you need me to do?" Chapter 5, Uncovered Truths. The courtroom fell silent as Bianca Vanguard took the stand, her white blouse and navy skirt projecting humble dignity. Her testimony had been anticipated for days, the final act in a trial that had captivated Nashville's elite. Dominic sat in the back row, watching his ex-wife carefully. She avoided his gaze as she swore to tell the truth, her voice steady despite the circumstance. Ayuse Zhao approached the stand. "Mrs. Vanguard, please describe your relationship with Hudson Reeves." Bianca cleared her throat delicately. "We met through the foundation. He was charismatic, understanding. At first, it was purely professional, but over time," she paused, seemingly emotional. "He took advantage of my loneliness. My husband was always working distant. And when did Mr. Reeves first suggest accessing classified information from Vanguard Construction?" "He didn't, not directly. He would ask questions about Dominic's work, seeming genuinely interested. I didn't realize he was gathering intelligence." Her voice trembled perfectly. "By the time I understood what was happening, he had compromising photos of us. He threatened to destroy my family, my reputation." Dominic kept his expression neutral, though inwardly he admired her performance. Bianca had always been exceptional at manipulation, a skill that had once made her a formidable psychologist. "Mrs. Vanguard, Did you create false medical reports suggesting your husband was mentally unstable? Bianca's eyes watered. Hudson convinced me it was the only way to protect Dominic from worse consequences. He said intelligence agencies were investigating him for past operations, that having him temporarily committed would keep him safe. So, you were trying to help your husband by having him declared incompetent? Zhao's skepticism was evident. It sounds irrational now, I know, but Hudson was persuasive. He knew exactly what to say, how to make terrible things seem necessary. The questioning continued for hours, with Bianca portraying herself as a victim of psychological manipulation. When court adjourned for the day, Dominic remained seated, watching Bianca confer with her new attorney before being escorted back to detention. Outside the courthouse, he found Cassidy waiting, her expression troubled. "She's lying," his daughter said flatly. "About everything." Dominic nodded. "Your mother is fighting for her life." "No, I mean," Cassidy lowered her voice. "I found something at the estate, in a garden shed, behind a loose panel. A hard drive." Dominic felt a chill of premonition. "What's on it?" "Recordings. Mom talking to Hudson about you, about Kosovo. She wasn't manipulated. She was hunting for information about your past for years, even before she met Hudson." This revelation shifted Dominic's understanding significantly. "Where's this drive now?" "Am I safe at the equestrian center?" "I didn't know what to do with it." Dominic squeezed her shoulder. "You did the right thing telling me. We'll handle it together." That evening, they retrieved the drive from Cassidy's personal safe. Back at his secure apartment, Dominic examined its contents while Cassidy waited anxiously. The drive contained hundreds of files, recordings, documents, photographs, all focused on his military service and specifically Operation Blackfish. Most disturbing were recordings of Bianca's therapy sessions with former soldiers from his unit, sessions where she'd posed as a PTSD specialist while extracting classified information. "She was building a case against you for years," Cassidy whispered, watching over his shoulder. "What?" Dominic opened another file, a photograph of a younger Bianca with a man he recognized immediately, Miguel Velasquez. "Because your mother had her own agenda from the beginning." Further files revealed the truth. Bianca was Velasquez's cousin. Their mothers were sisters. She had spent years infiltrating Dominic's life, gathering evidence about Blackfish, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy him. "Was any of it real?" Cassidy asked, her voice breaking. "Did she ever actually care about us?" Dominic closed the laptop, turning to face his daughter. Her pain was evident, and despite his own emotional control, he felt a surge of genuine rage at Bianca's manipulation of their children. "I believe she loved you and Rowan," he said carefully. "But her primary loyalty was elsewhere. To Velasquez? To family. Her true family." Cassidy's face hardened, an expression so like his own that Dominic felt a flash of pride. "What do we do now?" "Now we ensure justice is complete." The next morning, Dominic met with AUSA Zhao in her office, the hard drive secured in an evidence bag between them. "This changes everything," she said after reviewing key files. "Conspiracy, fraud, false identity. These charges go far beyond industrial espionage." "I only ask that my children be protected from the media fallout," Dominic said. "They're victims in this as much as anyone." Zhao nodded. "We'll do our best. But Mr. Vanguard, this evidence suggests Miguel Velasquez is alive and possibly in the country. If that's true, you could be in danger. I'm aware of the risk. We can offer protective custody." "Unnecessary," Dominic cut her off politely. "My security team is quite capable." As he left the federal building, Dominic received a text from Rowan. "Meeting us tonight. Location compromised?" He replied, "Proceed normally. Eyes on you." Preston had established surveillance around Rowan's apartment, tracking Sophia's movements. The woman was professional, but not infallible. She'd failed to detect their counter-surveillance measures. That afternoon, news of Bianca's additional charges broke across local media. By evening, extended coverage had revealed her connection to Velasquez and the 20-year deception. Reporters swarmed Vanguard headquarters, forcing Dominic to issue a brief statement expressing shock and requesting privacy for his children. In reality, he was executing the final stages of the Phoenix Protocol while monitoring Rowan's meeting with Sophia. Through hidden cameras, he watched as his son handed over doctored information, GPS coordinates for a supposed safe house where Dominic was planning to hide from Velasquez. Sophia took the bait, immediately making a call after leaving Rowan's apartment. Preston's team tracked her to a modest hotel on the outskirts of Nashville, where she met with 3 men with military bearing, Velasquez's team preparing their move. "Sir," Preston reported, "facial recognition confirms Velasquez is among them. How do you want to proceed?" Dominic considered his options. Direct confrontation would be messy, potentially dangerous. But allowing Velasquez to believe he held the advantage would draw him into the open. Maintain surveillance. No intervention unless they make a move toward Cassidy or Vanguard headquarters. Dominic checked his watch. The Colorado transfer begins at midnight. Ensure all security protocols are active. At exactly midnight, digital assets worth billions began moving through a labyrinth of financial channels, invisible to anyone without knowledge of the Phoenix Protocol. By morning, Vanguard construction would appear unchanged on the surface, while its true value resided in a new corporate entity headquartered in Colorado. Dominic worked through the night, coordinating with Ambrose to ensure the transition proceeded seamlessly. At dawn, he received confirmation: Phoenix complete. The company he'd spent decades building was now secured against any attack, legal or otherwise. As morning light filtered through his office windows, Preston arrived with an update. "They're moving, sir." 3 vehicles headed toward the coordinates Rowan provided. The location was a Vanguard property, a secluded training facility for security personnel. Currently empty, it would appear to be the perfect hideout. "Alert the federal task force," Dominic instructed. "They'll find ample evidence of Velasquez's past activities in his hotel room." Anonymous tip. Preston nodded. "And Rowan, sir?" Dominic considered his son's role. Rowan had cooperated, proving his value one final time. "Ensure he's clear of the area. Then cut all surveillance. His part is finished." By noon, federal agents had arrested Sophia and 2 of Velasquez's men at the training facility. Velasquez himself had escaped the net, but his identity was now confirmed, an international alert issued for his capture. Dominic watched the news coverage from his private jet, already en route to Colorado. Beside him, Cassidy stared out the window, her expression subdued. "What about Rowan?" she asked. "Your brother made his choice," Dominic replied evenly. "Multiple choices, in fact. But he helped at the end. With Sophia." "He did," Dominic acknowledged, "which is why his education fund remains intact. He'll have the opportunity to build a life, just not with us." Cassidy fell silent, processing the finality of his statement. Finally, she asked, "And Mom?" "Your mother will face the full consequences of her actions. The evidence is overwhelming." "Will you testify against her?" Dominic shook his head. "Unnecessary. The recordings speak for themselves." As the plane continued westward, Dominic reviewed the day's achievements. Bianca faced decades in prison. Hudson Reeves had already begun his sentence. Velasquez was exposed and hunted. The Prometheus project was secure, transferred to Vanguard's new corporate structure. Most importantly, those who had betrayed him had been systematically destroyed, not through crude violence, but through careful strategy. The stillness within him was complete, a perfect clarity that confirmed the rightness of his actions. Cassidy eventually dozed off, the emotional exhaustion of recent weeks catching up to her. Dominic watched his daughter sleep, acknowledging the one true loyalty in his life. She had chosen correctly, and for that, she would remain part of his reconfigured world. Everything else was simply collateral damage in a war he hadn't started but had decisively finished. Chapter 6. Scorched Earth. The Colorado estate sprawled across 300 acres of mountain terrain, its main house a modernist structure of glass and stone that captured the dramatic landscape. Security measures were integrated so seamlessly into the architecture that most visitors would never notice the bulletproof glass, the thermal sensors, or the subterranean safe room. Dominic stood on the main terrace, watching Cassidy work with her new riding instructor in the state-of-the-art equestrian center below. She'd adapted quickly to their new life, immersing herself in training for the upcoming competitive season. 6 weeks had passed since their departure from Nashville. In that time, Vanguard Construction had been acquired by Sentinel Enterprises, a corporate entity that was, in reality, Dominic's new operational base. The transition had been seamless, with key personnel relocated to Colorado facilities while projects continued uninterrupted. Preston approached, tablet in hand. "Sir, the verdict came in." Dominic nodded, having expected this news. "And guilty on all counts." The judge denied all motions for leniency based on the premeditated nature of the conspiracy. Sentencing: 30 years for Mrs. Vanguard. No possibility of parole for at least 20. Preston hesitated. She made a statement after the verdict. "Directed at you." Dominic's expression remained impassive. "I'm sure it was colorful." She said, "This isn't over. Not while Miguel lives." A faint smile crossed Dominic's face. A hollow threat. Velasquez is running for his life, his support network dismantled. He'll never get close enough to matter. The international manhunt for Miguel Velasquez had intensified over the past month. 3 of his associates had been captured in Mexico, his financial assets frozen. The man himself remained elusive, but increasingly isolated. "There's something else," Preston continued. "Rowan attempted to visit her at the detention center yesterday. He was denied access. Her privileges have been restricted after she attacked another inmate." This was unexpected. Dominic had assumed Rowan would distance himself completely after the truth about his mother emerged. Interesting. Continue monitoring the situation. Later that afternoon, Dominic conducted his weekly video conference with Ambrose, who had remained in Nashville to oversee the final dissolution of Vanguard's original corporate structure. The Prometheus project received final approval, Ambrose reported. Under Sentinel's management, of course. The Defense Department is satisfied with the transition. Excellent. And the old Vanguard properties? Liquidation proceeds as scheduled. The estate closes next week. Sold to that tech entrepreneur from California, as expected. Dominic nodded approval. Every trace of his former life was being systematically erased, replaced by a more secure, more controlled existence. The Nashville estate, once his family home, was now just another asset to be converted into capital. After the call ended, he received a notification from the estate's security system. A vehicle had passed the outer perimeter, a delivery truck expected and authorized. Moments later, his phone chimed with a message from an encrypted source. Package delivered. Confirmation required. Dominic descended to the basement level, entering a secure room that housed the estate surveillance center. From here, every corner of the property could be monitored, every approach tracked and analyzed. A padded envelope waited on the central console. Inside was a single thumb drive and a handwritten note. Verification complete. Subject neutralized per protocol. Documentation enclosed. Inserting the drive into a standalone system, Dominic reviewed its contents, photographs, GPS data, and a brief video. The images showed Miguel Velasquez's body in a remote area of the Sierra Madre Mountains in Mexico. The cause of death appeared to be a sniper shot, clean, professional, untraceable. Dominic deleted the files, then incinerated the drive and note in a specialized disposal unit. The final loose end had been severed. Velasquez's threat, both personal and professional, was permanently eliminated. He felt no particular satisfaction at the man's death, merely the completion of a necessary task. In his military days, mission objectives were achieved or they weren't. Emotion played no role in the assessment. That evening, Cassidy joined him for dinner on the terrace, her cheeks flushed from hours of writing. "Coach Rivera says Tempest and I could qualify for the Olympic development program next year," she announced, her excitement evident. "That's excellent news," Dominic replied, genuinely pleased. His daughter's talent had always been exceptional. Now, it would have the proper venue to develop. "I got a text from Rowan today," she added cautiously. He asked how we are. Dominic's expression didn't change. "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing yet. I want to talk to you first." He considered the situation carefully. Rowan had betrayed him multiple times, but had ultimately assisted in the trap for Velasquez. The boy was still his son, biologically if not in loyalty. "You may maintain limited contact if you wish," he said finally, "but no specifics about our location or security measures. Your brother's judgment has proven questionable." Cassidy nodded, understanding the boundaries. "Do you think he'll ever be part of our family again?" Dominic's response was measured. "Family is defined by loyalty, Cassidy. Your brother chose his side repeatedly. Actions have consequences. People can change, Dad." "They can. But trust, once broken, cannot be fully restored." He held her gaze steadily. "Remember that lesson. It will serve you well in life." Later that night, Dominic received a call from Preston. "Sir, we've detected unusual activity on Rowan's accounts. He's withdrawn significant amount from his education fund and booked a flight to Mexico City. This was concerning. When departure is tomorrow morning. We only caught it because of the flag keywords in our monitoring system." Dominic considered the implications. Rowan's sudden interest in Mexico, coming immediately after Velasquez's elimination, suggested he might have independent connections to the man's network. "Maintain surveillance, but take no action yet. I want to see what he's pursuing." The next day, Dominic reviewed the extensive security footage around Bianca's federal detention center. The recording of Rowan's attempted visit showed his son arguing intensely with guards before being turned away. Lip-reading software provided a partial transcript. "She needs to know, family business, urgent message." What message was so urgent that Rowan would risk association with his disgraced mother? And why follow it immediately with travel to Mexico? The answer came 3 days later, when Preston reported that Rowan had visited a remote village in the Sierra Madre, the same region where Velasquez had been eliminated. He met with a woman in her 70s, Preston explained, showing Dominic's surveillance photos. Local assets identify her as Elena Velasquez, Miguel's mother. The pieces clicked into place. He's trying to continue his grandmother's vendetta. "It appears so, sir." He stayed for several hours, then returned to Mexico City. He's scheduled to fly back tomorrow. Dominic processed this information with the same cold clarity that had guided all his recent decisions. Rowan wasn't merely distancing himself. He was actively positioning himself as an enemy. Revoke his education fund. Freeze all accounts connected to him. Alert our security teams to treat him as a potential threat. Preston hesitated. "Sir, he's your son." "No." Dominic's voice was final. "He's chosen his true family, and it isn't mine." The following week brought the final phase of Dominic's strategic transformation. Sentinel Enterprises announced the successful integration of Vanguard's assets and unveiled its first major project, a revolutionary security system based on the Prometheus technology, with contracts already signed with 3 foreign governments. The business world marveled at the seamless transition, unaware that the architectural genius behind Vanguard now operated under a new corporate identity, his personal history effectively erased from public record. Cassidy thrived in her new environment, her relationship with her father strengthening as they built their reduced but intensely loyal family unit. She never mentioned Rowan again after learning of his trip to Mexico, seeming to accept Dominic's assessment of her brother's betrayal. 3 months after relocating to Colorado, Dominic received one final communication related to his former life, a letter forwarded through Ambrose from Bianca. He considered burning it unread, then decided knowledge was always preferable to ignorance. The letter was brief. "You've won this round, Dominic. But there are truths even you don't know, about Kosovo, about why I chose you. Rowan understands now. He's seen the real evidence. One day, you'll face real justice for what you did to those families. Family never forgets. Family never forgives." Dominic incinerated the letter, unmoved by its threats. Bianca would spend decades in prison. Velasquez was dead. Rowan was neutralized, a penniless young man with a felony record and no access to the resources needed to pose a genuine threat. Most importantly, Dominic had emerged stronger, his company more valuable, his security more comprehensive. He had responded to betrayal with systematic destruction of his enemies, preserving what mattered, his legacy and his relationship with his loyal daughter. That evening, he sat with Cassidy watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. She seemed content, her earlier trauma gradually fading into memory. "Dad," she said suddenly, "are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. Happiness had never been his primary concern. Security, success, control, these were his metrics for evaluating life. "I have everything I need," he answered truthfully, "and those who betrayed us have been dealt with appropriately. That's its own satisfaction." Cassidy nodded, understanding. She was his daughter in more ways than genetics. She had inherited his clarity, his unwavering sense of loyalty. In her, his true legacy would continue. As darkness fell over the mountains, Dominic reflected on the events that had led to this moment. The betrayals had been painful, but ultimately clarifying. They had stripped away illusions, revealed true loyalties, and allowed him to rebuild with perfect awareness of who could be trusted. In the end, the architect had redesigned not just his business, but his entire life, creating a structure so secure that those who had tried to destroy him could never reach him again. Chapter 7. Embers of the Past. 5 years passed. Sentinel Enterprises thrived under Dominic's leadership, expanding globally with security contract for governments and elite private clients. The Prometheus system had revolutionized threat assessment, making Dominic wealthier and more influential than ever before. Cassidy, now 22, had fulfilled her potential, competing internationally in equestrian events while completing her business degree. She had grown into a formidable young woman, poised, strategic, and fiercely loyal to her father. The Colorado estate had become a true home, its security measures constantly updated to maintain their impenetrability. The past seemed firmly buried, relevant only as a lesson in vigilance. Until the day Preston delivered unexpected news. "Sir, Bianca Vanguard has died in federal custody." Dominic looked up from architectural plans for a new Sentinel facility in Dubai. Cause, officially, complications from pneumonia. She was in the medical ward for 3 weeks before succumbing yesterday. Dominic absorbed this information without visible reaction. Bianca's death was simply the closing of a chapter, neither cause for celebration nor mourning. "Has Cassidy been informed?" "Not yet, sir. I thought you might prefer to tell her yourself." Dominic nodded. "Thank you. Any other developments I should be aware of?" Preston hesitated. Rowan visited her frequently during her illness. According to our sources, he was present when she died. This was noteworthy. Despite having his financial support severed, Rowan had maintained his connection to Bianca. "And what is my son doing these days?" "He's a journalist now, working for an online news outlet specializing in corporate accountability. Nothing prominent, but he's developed a following for exposés on security contractors." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Including Sentinel?" "Not directly. He's careful to focus on companies with documented ethical violations. His work is actually quite thorough. An interesting development. Rather than self-destructing after being cut off, Rowan had found a path that allowed him to maintain his opposition to Dominic's world while establishing his own identity. Continue monitoring his activities, and arrange for flowers to be sent to the funeral from Cassidy. Not from me. Later that day, Dominic found his daughter in the estate's glass-walled gym, completing her daily training routine. At 22, Cassidy was at her physical peak, strong, graceful, disciplined. She lowered the weights as he entered, immediately alert to his expression. "What's happened?" "Your mother has died. Pneumonia complications." Cassidy absorbed the news silently, her face showing complex emotions: grief, confusion, perhaps relief. "When?" "Yesterday. Rowan was with her." She nodded, processing this information. "Will there be a funeral?" "Yes. If you wish to attend, arrangements can be made." Cassidy considered this, then shook her head. "No, that part of my life is over. But perhaps send flowers." "Already arranged." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of shared history between them. Finally, Cassidy asked, "Does this change anything?" Dominic understood the deeper question. Did Bianca's death alter the careful architecture of their new life? Did it diminish the need for vigilance? Death ends a life, but not necessarily its influence, he replied. We maintain our current protocols. Cassidy nodded, accepting his assessment. She had learned to trust his strategic thinking implicitly. I'll be in Milan next week for the competition. Will you attend? Of course. Dominic had never missed her events, viewing them as both personal support and sound security practice. His presence ensured the best protection teams were always deployed around her. That evening, as Dominic reviewed security footage of the estate's perimeter, a daily habit, he received an encrypted message on his private channel. Funeral arrangements finalized. St. Mark's Episcopal, Nashville. Thursday, 11 a.m. Limited attendance expected. He hadn't requested this information, which meant Preston had anticipated his interest. The man's thoroughness was why he remained Dominic's most trusted security asset. Dominic considered the funeral briefly. Attending would be unnecessary and potentially unwise. There was nothing to be gained from such a public appearance. Yet something about Bianca's death felt unresolved, a tactical loose end. 3 days later, as Cassidy prepared for her trip to Milan, Preston arrived with his morning security briefing. Sir, there's been an unusual development. Rowan has scheduled a meeting with Ambrose Huxley. This was genuinely surprising. Ambrose had remained with Sentinel after the transition, one of the few who knew the complete history of Dominic's strategic retreat from Nashville. When? Tomorrow. Ambrose reported it immediately, of course. He's awaiting your instructions. Dominic considered his options. Rowan reaching out to Ambrose suggested he was seeking information, perhaps trying to understand more about the events that had fractured the family. Tell Ambrose to meet with him. Record everything. I want a full analysis afterward. The timing, immediately after Bianca's death, couldn't be coincidental. Something had been set in motion, and Dominic needed to understand its parameters before deciding how to respond. Also, he added, I've reconsidered the funeral. Make arrangements for remote observation. I want eyes inside the church and complete surveillance of attendees. Preston nodded. Already in progress, sir. The day of Bianca's funeral brought overcast skies to Nashville, appropriate weather for the small gathering at St. Mark's Episcopal. Through secure video feed, Dominic watched the proceedings from his Colorado office. The attendance was sparse. A handful of former colleagues from the Callaway Foundation, a few distant relatives, Rowan, and surprisingly, Diana Colburn, the art curator who had been friendly with both Dominic and Bianca years ago. Rowan delivered a brief eulogy, his words careful and measured. He spoke of his mother's intelligence, her dedication to psychology, her love for her children. Not once did he mention Dominic or the circumstances that had led to her imprisonment. After the service, the surveillance team reported a private conversation between Rowan and Diana in the church garden. The audio was partially captured. Diana, have you told him yet? Rowan, not yet. The timing needs to be right. Diana, he deserves to know the truth, especially now. Rowan, truth hasn't exactly been valued in our family. The exchange raised immediate flags in Dominic's tactical assessment. What truth was Diana referring to? And why would Rowan need to tell him anything? The answer came the following day when Preston reported on Rowan's meeting with Ambrose. Sir, Rowan presented Ambrose with DNA test results. He claims they prove he is not your biological son. Dominic's expression remained impassive, but his mind raced through implications. Explain. According to the documentation, which appears authentic, Bianca was already pregnant when you met. The biological father is listed as Miguel Velasquez. The revelation locked into place like the final tumbler in a complex lock. Bianca's long game suddenly became clear. She hadn't just married Dominic to gather intelligence on Kosovo. She had infiltrated his life to place Velasquez's child in his household, creating the ultimate sleeper agent. And Cassidy? Dominic asked, his voice perfectly controlled. The tests only address Rowan's parentage. There's no information about Cassidy. Dominic nodded, processing this new intelligence. Did Rowan explain why he's revealing this now? He told Ambrose that Bianca confessed everything before her death. Apparently, she kept extensive records, journals, recordings, documentation about Kosovo and her relationship with Velasquez. She left these materials to Rowan with specific instructions about their use, which are unknown. Rowan didn't elaborate. Dominic rose from his desk, moving to the window that overlooked the mountains. The stillness within him remained undisturbed, his tactical mind already calculating response scenarios. Have Cassidy's DNA compared against mine, discreetly, using samples from the medical records in our secure archive, and increase surveillance on Rowan. I want to know everyone he contacts, especially any connection to Elena Velasquez in Mexico. As Preston left to execute these instructions, Dominic considered the strategic implications. If Rowan wasn't his biological son, it explained the boy's persistent disloyalty. But it also meant Bianca's deception had been even more comprehensive than he'd understood. The question now was Rowan's intent. Was he simply seeking truth about his parentage? Or was this the opening move in a new attack, the continuation of Velasquez's vendetta, now carried forward by his son? That evening, Dominic received confirmation. The DNA comparison showed Cassidy was definitively his biological daughter. The relief he felt was genuine. Despite his emotional control, the thought of both children being part of Bianca's deception would have been a blow. 2 days later, as Dominic and his security team prepared for the trip to Milan for Cassidy's competition, Preston delivered another update. "Sir, Rowan has published an article. It's about you." Dominic accepted the tablet Preston offered, scanning the lengthy piece titled "The Architect of Deception, Domestic Counterintelligence, and the Price of Security." The article was meticulously researched, detailing how Dominic had deployed military-grade surveillance against his own family for years before the final confrontation. It revealed the extensive monitoring systems in the Nashville estate, the tracking of Bianca's movements, the infiltration of her foundation's communications. Most damning, it included excerpts from Dominic's own security logs, documentation that should have been impossible for Rowan to access. "How do you get these files?" Dominic asked, his voice dangerously calm. Preston looked genuinely troubled. "We're investigating, sir. The most likely explanation is that Bianca had a backup system we never discovered, perhaps something she established years ago." The article carefully avoided classified information about Kosovo or Dominic's military service. Instead, it focused on the ethics of domestic surveillance, using the Vanguard family's destruction as a case study in paranoia and control. "He's being strategic," Dominic observed, "undermining my reputation without exposing himself to national security charges." "The article is gaining traction," Preston confirmed. "Several major news outlets have picked it up. Sentinel's PR team is preparing a response focusing on the criminal convictions of Bianca and Reeves." Dominic closed the tablet. No response. Engaging would validate his platform. "Sir, your reputation is irrelevant compared to operational security." Dominic's tone ended the discussion. "Proceed with preparations for Milan. Increase Cassidy's protection detail, and find out who helped Rowan access those files. Someone betrayed us, and I want to know who." The Milan trip proceeded as planned, with Cassidy capturing second place in her event. She performed flawlessly despite the turbulence surrounding Rowan's article, which she had read but not discussed with her father. On their return flight to Colorado, she finally broached the subject. "Rowan claims he's not your biological son." Dominic met her gaze steadily. "DNA tests confirm his claim. And me, you are unquestionably my daughter." Cassidy nodded, relief visible in her slight smile. "I never doubted it. We're too much alike." She hesitated before asking, "What will you do about his article?" "Nothing." Responding would only amplify his message. "He won't stop, you know. This is just the beginning." Dominic respected her assessment. Cassidy had always possessed exceptional insight. "Then we'll be prepared for whatever comes next." What came next arrived a week later, when Rowan published a second article, this one addressing the Prometheus system directly. Without revealing classified technical details, he questioned the ethics of predictive security technology that could be used for social control rather than genuine protection. More concerning was the evidence he presented. Internal Sentinel documents showing test deployments of Prometheus in urban settings without public disclosure. Again, information that should have been inaccessible to him. Dominic called an emergency meeting with his top security team. We have a breach, possibly ongoing. I want every system audited, every communication channel verified. Find the vulnerability. As his team dispersed to execute these orders, Dominic received an encrypted message from an unknown source. The architect builds walls to keep others out, never realizing he's walled himself in. Truth is coming. Preparations are complete. The message's implication was clear. Rowan's articles were merely preliminary moves in a larger strategy. The real attack was still coming. Dominic activated the highest security protocols for the Colorado estate and Sentinel's headquarters. Then he did something unprecedented. He called Rowan directly. His son, or rather, Velasquez's son, answered on the third ring. I wondered when you'd call. You have my attention, Dominic said evenly. What exactly are you hoping to achieve? Justice. Rowan's voice was calm, collected. For the families in Kosovo. For my father. For everyone whose lives you've destroyed in your pursuit of control. Your articles carefully avoid mentioning Kosovo. Why maintain that restraint if justice is your goal? Because the full story deserves the proper venue. Not a news cycle, but a courtroom. Dominic processed this threat, considering its credibility. You lack evidence that would stand up to legal scrutiny. Otherwise, you have moved already. That's where you're wrong. Rowan's confidence was palpable. Mother kept everything. Every record, every communication about Kosovo. The real operation, not the sanitized version in official reports. The families weren't collateral damage. They were targeted deliberately to prevent witnesses. Fabrications, Dominic dismissed. Even if such documents exist, they wouldn't be admissible, unless they were authenticated by someone who was there. Someone like Diana Colburn. The name hit Dominic like a physical blow. Diana hadn't just been an art curator and family friend. She had been military intelligence, part of the Kosovo operations documentation team. Her presence at Bianca's funeral suddenly carried new significance. Diana has agreed to testify, Rowan continued, to authenticate everything. She's been carrying this guilt for 20 years. For the first time since the family's dissolution, Dominic felt the stillness within him waver. Diana's testimony would transform Bianca's documents from hearsay to evidence. If she had maintained her security clearance, her words would carry tremendous weight. What do you want? Dominic asked, his tactical mind already calculating containment options. I want you to face what you've done. Publicly. No more hiding behind corporate structures or security systems. The truth about Kosovo, about the families, about everything. And if I refuse, then in 3 days, Diana and I will present everything to the International Criminal Court. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to war crimes, Dominic. After the call ended, Dominic sat motionless in his office, reassessing the situation with cold precision. If Rowan and Diana had the evidence they claimed, the threat was genuine, not just to his reputation or freedom, but to the entire security architecture he had built around himself and Cassidy. He summoned Preston and gave new instructions. I need everything we have on Diana Colburn. Current location, communications, security vulnerabilities. And prepare the Eclipse protocol. Preston's expression showed rare alarm. Sir, Eclipse is a last resort. The collateral damage will be preferable to the alternative, Dominic finished firmly. Prepare it. I'll decide whether to activate. The Eclipse protocol was Dominic's ultimate contingency plan, a complete disappearance strategy that would erase all connections to his current identity while transferring assets to untraceable accounts. It would mean abandoning Sentinel, the Colorado estate, everything he had built over the past 5 years. Most critically, it would mean Cassidy would need to disappear with him or be left behind permanently. For 3 days, Dominic weighed his options while his security team gathered intelligence on Diana and Rowan. Diana had indeed maintained high-level clearance, working as a consultant for intelligence agencies while maintaining her art world cover. She was currently staying at a hotel in Washington, D.C., presumably preparing for the ICC filing. Rowan had been busy as well, meeting with human rights attorneys specializing in war crimes prosecution. The threat was not a bluff. They were proceeding methodically, building a case that could withstand international scrutiny. On the evening of the second day, Dominic called Cassidy into his office. She deserved to understand what was coming. Rowan is preparing to file war crimes charges against me for an operation in Kosovo, he explained, omitting no details about the situation. The evidence he has, combined with Diana Colburn's testimony, creates a credible legal threat. Cassidy listened intently, her expression thoughtful. At 22, she had developed the same strategic thinking that had served Dominic throughout his life. What really happened in Kosovo? She asked finally. Dominic considered how to answer. For once, the complete truth seemed necessary. The official mission was to extract scientists working on bioweapons. The unofficial directive was to ensure no knowledge of those weapons could be reproduced. That meant eliminating anyone with detailed understanding, including family members who might have absorbed information through proximity. You killed civilians. I followed orders that prevented those weapons from reaching terrorist cells. The operation saved countless lives at the cost of 17. Cassidy absorbed this, her face unreadable. And now Rowan wants you to pay for those decisions. Yes, though his motivation is more personal, vengeance for Velasquez, his biological father. What are our options? Dominic appreciated her immediate alignment with his interests. The hour confirming her loyalty remained absolute. I can activate the Eclipse protocol. We disappear completely, with new identities and resources. Sentinel and everything connected to our current lives would be abandoned. Or, I can neutralize the threat directly. Diana is the linchpin. Without her testimony, Rowan's evidence becomes significantly less credible. Cassidy considered both options carefully. Neutralize as necessary. Dominic's voice was calm. Eclipse means starting over. Everything you've built, your competitive career, your future at Sentinel, would be lost, while eliminating Diana might preserve everything. Potentially, though the ethical calculation is complex. Cassidy fell silent, weighing the implications of both approaches. Finally, she looked up, her eyes reflecting the same cold clarity Dominic had always possessed. There's a third option, she said, one that preserves our position while addressing the threat permanently. Chapter 8, Blood and Truth. Dawn broke over Washington, D.C., painting the Capitol's monuments in gold light. In her hotel suite, Diana Colburn reviewed documents spread across a large table. Photos, reports, and handwritten journals spanning 2 decades. The evidence that would finally bring justice for 17 innocent lives. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rowan. Meeting with ICC counsel at 10. Bringing final affidavits. Diana replied with confirmation, then continued organizing materials for the presentation. At 62, she had spent half her life carrying the burden of Kosovo, the operation she had documented but failed to protest, despite knowing its true nature. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw a young woman in a hotel uniform holding a room service tray. I didn't order breakfast, Diana said without opening the door. Complimentary for Platinum members, ma'am, the woman replied pleasantly. From the manager. Diana hesitated, then unlocked the door, maintaining the security chain. The young woman smiled, her dark eyes oddly familiar. I can just leave it out here if you prefer, she offered. Something about her voice triggered Diana's instincts, honed through years of intelligence work. She started to close the door when the young woman's foot prevented it. Hello, Miss Colburn. I'm Cassidy Vanguard. We need to talk. Diana's heart raced. How did you find me? The same way we found my mother's hidden archives. Nothing stays buried forever. Cassidy's smile remained pleasant. I'm alone, and I'm unarmed. But this conversation needs to happen now, before you make an irreversible mistake. After a moment's consideration, Diana removed the chain, allowing Dominic's daughter to enter. Cassidy placed the tray on a side table, surveying the documents with calm interest. You've been thorough, she noted. Your father taught me the importance of documentation, Diana replied, watching her warily. During Kosovo. Yes, I know about Kosovo now. The real operation, not the official version. Cassidy's expression became serious. That's why I'm here, to help you understand the full context before you proceed. Diana's eyes narrowed. If you're here to threaten me. No threats, Cassidy interrupted smoothly. Just information you don't have. Information that changes the ethical calculation significantly. She removed a thumb drive from her pocket, placing it on the table. This contains the complete operational history of the biological weapons program the Kosovo scientists were developing. Not just theoretical research, deployment plans, target assessments, projected casualty rates. They weren't reluctant participants, Ms. Colburn. They were enthusiastic architects of mass death. Diana glanced at the drive suspiciously. Convenient evidence that appears just before your father might face consequences. Evidence that your own agency possessed but compartmentalized. Your clearance gave you access to the operation, but not its justification. Cassidy's voice remained calm. The families weren't eliminated to prevent knowledge transfer. They were eliminated because they were active participants, providing test subjects from vulnerable populations, documenting results, preparing deployment methodologies. That wasn't in any briefing I received, Diana objected. No, because the operation had to appear morally questionable to those carrying it out. Your genuine ethical distress made your documentation more credible, more thorough. Cassidy gestured to the drive. The truth is there. Verifiable through intelligence channels you still have access to. Diana stared at the young woman, seeing Dominic's calculating intelligence in her steady gaze. Even if what you're saying is true, it doesn't justify stopping people who were preparing to kill hundreds of thousands, who had already conducted lethal experiments on children. Cassidy's voice hardened slightly. The moral calculation isn't as simple as Rowan believes, or as you've convinced yourself. The two women regarded each other in silence, decades of complexity between them. Finally, Diana asked, "What do you want from me?" "Review the evidence. Verify it through your channels. Then make your decision based on complete information rather than a partial understanding that's tormented you for 20 years. And if I still choose to testify?" Cassidy rose gracefully. "Then you'll do so with full knowledge of the consequences for global security, for countless lives, and yes, for my father. But you'll be making that choice with all the facts, not just those that support a predetermined narrative of guilt." As she reached the door, Cassidy turned back. "My father followed orders that saved countless lives at terrible personal cost. He's lived with that burden without complaint or self-pity. Before you condemn him, understand precisely what you're condemning." After Cassidy departed, Diana stared at the thumb drive for a long moment before inserting it into her secure laptop. The files were extensive: intelligence reports, surveillance documentation, evidence of atrocities committed by the supposedly innocent scientists and their families. If authentic, they transformed the moral landscape completely. Kosovo wouldn't be a war crime, but a necessary intervention that prevented mass casualties. Diana reached for her phone to contact her former intelligence supervisor, someone who could verify the information's authenticity. Before she could dial, a text arrived from Rowan, running late. "Meet at 11 instead?" She replied affirmatively, then began methodically reviewing the new evidence, her trained analyst's mind assessing its credibility and implications. Across the city, in a secure apartment, Dominic received Cassidy's update. Phase 1 complete. Seed planted. Proceeding to Phase 2. His response was brief, confirmed. Proceed. The plan Cassidy had developed was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than silencing Diana or fleeing through eclipse, they would provide the complete context of Kosovo, transforming the narrative from war crime to necessary intervention. Simultaneously, they would address the Rowan situation permanently, not through direct action against him, but by undermining the foundation of his vendetta. At exactly 10:30 a.m., Rowan received a call from a blocked number. He answered cautiously. "Hello? Rowan Vanguard? This is Special Agent Teresa Harding, FBI. We need to meet immediately regarding your planned ICC filing." Rowan's suspicion was immediate. "How do you know about that?" "National security implications. I can explain in person." The woman's voice was professional, authoritative. "I'm at the Jefferson Memorial, East Entrance. Come alone, or this conversation will become significantly more complicated." After a moment's hesitation, Rowan agreed. He texted Diana about the delay, then headed to the meeting location, hyper-aware of his surroundings. The Jefferson Memorial was relatively quiet on the weekday morning. Near the east entrance, a woman in a dark suit waited, her posture suggesting federal training. As Rowan approached, he noted her official demeanor and the subtle bulge of a shoulder holster. "Mr. Vanguard," she greeted him. "Walk with me." They moved toward a less populated area of the memorial. "What's this about?" Rowan demanded. "Your ICC filing would compromise active intelligence operations," the agent explained. "The Kosovo situation wasn't what you believe it was." Rowan's expression hardened. "I have evidence. Partial evidence. Missing critical context." Agent Harding handed him a sealed envelope. "This is a national security letter prohibiting disclosure of classified information related to Operation Blackfish. Violation carries a minimum 20-year sentence." Rowan examined the document. Official FBI letterhead, proper legal language, apparently authentic. "This is intimidation. This is national security." The agent's tone remained professional. "The scientists weren't developing vaccines, Mr. Vanguard. They were weaponizing smallpox with a 90% mortality rate. Their families weren't innocent bystanders. They were active participants in human experimentation. My mother created a narrative that supported her cousin's vendetta." Agent Harding's expression softened slightly. "Miguel Velasquez wasn't abandoned by your father. He was extracted, but subsequently went rogue, selling intel to hostile entities. The official death was covered to prevent further compromise." Rowan's mind raced, trying to process this new information against the narrative he'd accepted for years. "I don't believe you. Your belief is irrelevant to the facts." The agent nodded toward the envelope. "That document has been filed with the ICC as well. Your submission will be sealed under international security protocols." As Rowan struggled to formulate a response, the agent added, "You should also know that Diana Colburn is currently meeting with her former agency handlers, reviewing the complete operational history. The narrative you've built is collapsing, Mr. Vanguard." "This is my father's doing," Rowan said bitterly. "More manipulation. This is the intelligence community protecting its operations and assets." Agent Harding checked her watch. "You have a choice. Proceed with your filing and face federal charges, or recognize that you've been operating with incomplete information and stand down." She began walking away, then turned back. "One more thing. DNA doesn't make someone your father. 20 years of raising you, providing for you, protecting you, that's fatherhood. Whatever Miguel Velasquez contributed genetically, he wasn't your father. Dominic Vanguard was." As the agent disappeared into the morning crowd, Rowan stood motionless, the envelope heavy in his hand. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Need to discuss new information before meeting. Come to my hotel." 30 minutes later, Rowan sat in Diana's suite, listening as she methodically outlined what she had discovered after verifying the contents of Cassidy's thumb drive. "The intelligence is authentic," she concluded. "I've confirmed through 3 separate channels. The Kosovo scientists weren't victims. They were preparing a biological attack that could have killed millions." "This is exactly what that FBI agent told me," Rowan said, frowning. "Too convenient. Rowan, I've spent 20 years believing we committed an atrocity in Kosovo. That belief has shaped my entire life since." Diana's voice was tired but certain. "But I can't ignore evidence that contradicts that belief, especially when it's verified by sources I trust implicitly." "So you're backing out?" Rowan's voice held accusation. "I'm acknowledging that the moral question is more complex than either of us understood." Diana gestured to the documents spread across the table. "Your mother created a narrative based on Velasquez's perspective, a perspective that was fundamentally flawed because he didn't have access to the intelligence justifying the operation. She wouldn't have dedicated her life to a lie," Rowan insisted. "She dedicated her life to avenging the man she loved," Diana corrected gently. "Bianca was brilliant, but her judgment was compromised by emotion. She saw what she needed to see in the evidence. Rowan struggled with this perspective shift, years of certainty crumbling under the weight of new information. Even if the operation was justified, my father, Dominic, still surveilled his own family, still destroyed lives when he felt threatened, because he recognized the threat was real. Diana's expression was compassionate but firm. Bianca was actively working against him. You were being manipulated to assist. His response was proportionate to the actual danger, not some paranoid fantasy. The conversation continued for hours, with Diana systematically dismantling the narrative Rowan had accepted for years. By afternoon, his certainty had eroded significantly, replaced by uncomfortable doubt. "What will you do now?" Diana asked finally. Rowan stared out the window at the Washington skyline. "I don't know. Everything I believed, everything I've worked toward, was based on incomplete information." Diana finished. "There's no shame in reassessing when new evidence emerges. That's intellectual integrity." As Rowan left Diana's hotel, conflicted and unsettled, he found Cassidy waiting beside a black SUV across the street. "Hello, brother," she said, her expression unreadable. "I think it's time we talked." "Really talked?" Rowan hesitated, then nodded. "I suppose we should." Inside the vehicle, as they drove through Washington streets, Cassidy spoke with the direct precision that marked her as Dominic's daughter. "You've discovered that Kosovo wasn't what you believed," she began. "That changes the moral equation significantly." "If the information is accurate," Rowan qualified. "It is. But that's not why I wanted to speak with you." Cassidy's gaze was steady. "You've spent years defining yourself in opposition to our father. First as a betrayed son, then as an avenging one. But those identities were built on fundamentals that no longer exist." Rowan looked away. Meaning it's time to decide who you are without that opposition. Who Rowan Vanguard is when he's not crusading against Dominic. The question struck deeper than Rowan expected. His entire adult life had been shaped by the narrative of betrayal and justice. Without it, what remained? "I've built a career," he said finally. "My journalism stands on its own merits." "It does," Cassidy agreed. "You're exceptional at exposing actual wrongdoing. That talent doesn't disappear with this revelation." They rode in silence for several minutes before Rowan asked, "Did you know? About Kosovo, about my real father?" "I learned everything recently," Cassidy answered honestly. "DNA doesn't change who raised us, Rowan. Dominic is your father in every way that matters." He cut me off. Completely. After multiple betrayals. Cassidy's voice held no accusation, just statement of fact. His response was consistent with his principles. "Loyalty matters above all else. And you've remained loyal." "Yes. And been rewarded accordingly." Cassidy studied her half-brother thoughtfully. "The question now is what you want going forward. Continuation of a vendetta based on false premises? Or something else entirely?" Rowan had no immediate answer. The SUV eventually stopped at a private airfield outside the city, where a sleek corporate jet waited. "What's this?" he asked suspiciously. "Transportation, if you want it." Cassidy opened her door. "Father is willing to meet. Neutral territory. Just the three of us." Rowan stared at the jet, then at his sister. "Why would he agree to that?" "Because despite everything, you're still family. And because truth matters to him. He wants you to understand exactly what happened and why." After long consideration, Rowan nodded. "All right, where are we going?" "Montana, a property neither of us has visited before. Truly neutral ground." As they boarded the jet, Rowan felt a strange mix of trepidation and relief. For years, he defined himself through opposition to Dominic. Now that foundation was crumbling, leaving him uncertain of his identity, but somehow lighter. 3 hours later, the jet landed at a private airstrip nestled in Montana's mountainous terrain. A single vehicle waited, a black Range Rover with tinted windows. No security detail was visible, though Rowan assumed they were present somewhere. The drive to the property took 40 minutes through increasingly remote landscape. Finally, they arrived at a modernist structure of glass and stone overlooking a pristine lake. Inside, Dominic waited in a minimalist living area, standing as they entered. At 50, he remained imposing, his physical presence matching his strategic intelligence. His expression was neutral as he regarded his son for the first time in 5 years. Rowan, Dominic. Cassidy moved to stand beside her father, the family alignment clearly visible. Two strategic minds united by blood and loyalty, facing the outsider who shared only partial connection to their world. You've learned certain truths today, Dominic began without preamble. About Kosovo, about Velasquez, about your mother's agenda. Rowan nodded stiffly. If the information is accurate. It is. Verified by multiple intelligence sources, as Diana confirmed. Why reveal this now? Why not when everything fell apart? Dominic, consider the question. Because at that time, you weren't prepared to hear it. Your loyalty to your mother, to Bianca, was absolute. Now, with her gone and years of independence behind you, you're capable of evaluating evidence objectively. The assessment was accurate, which irritated Rowan. Dominic had always possessed an uncanny ability to read people, to calculate their psychological responses with precision. So what happens now? Rowan asked. That depends on you. Dominic moved to a sitting area, gesturing for both his children to join him. Your campaign against me was based on false premises, but your journalistic skill is genuine. Your ethical commitment is real, even if misapplied in this case. You're offering me what? Forgiveness. Rowan's tone was skeptical. I'm offering you understanding. Dominic's gaze was steady. You acted according to the information you had, with loyalty to what you believed was right. Those are admirable qualities, even when misdirected. Cassidy watched the exchange silently, her presence a reminder of what true loyalty had earned her. Dominic's complete trust, a position of power in his world. The question, Dominic continued, is whether you can accept that your fundamental understanding of the past was flawed. Not because you were foolish, but because you were deliberately misled by people you trusted. Rowan struggled with this framing. Even if Kosovo was justified, you still surveilled your own family. You still destroyed lives when you felt threatened. I responded to actual threats with appropriate countermeasures, Dominic corrected. Bianca was actively working against me. You were being manipulated to assist. My response was proportionate to the danger. The three vanguards sat in tense silence, years of conflict hanging between them. Finally, Rowan asked the question that had been forming since his conversation with Diana. Did you know? About me? That I wasn't. He couldn't finish the sentence. Dominic's expression softened slightly. No, that revelation came only recently, and it changes nothing about our past relationship. It changes everything, Rowan insisted. DNA doesn't determine fatherhood, Dominic replied evenly. I raised you, taught you, shaped your understanding of the world. The fact that Velasquez contributed genetically is irrelevant to our relationship. This perspective, so different from what Rowan had anticipated, caught him off guard. He had expected Dominic to use his biological heritage as further justification for cutting him off. Instead, his father was dismissing it as meaningless compared to their actual history together. So what do you want from me? Rowan asked finally. Resolution, Dominic answered simply. An end to a conflict based on misunderstanding. What happens beyond that is your choice. Cassidy spoke for the first time since entering. You've spent years defining yourself in opposition to father. That foundation no longer exists. The question now is who Rowan Vanguard chooses to be without that opposition. The conversation continued late into the evening, moving from Kosovo to the family's dissolution to Rowan's life since. Gradually, the tension eased as understanding, if not reconciliation, developed. By midnight, the three had reached an uneasy détente. Rowan would abandon his campaign against Dominic, acknowledging the false premises that had driven it. In exchange, Dominic would restore his education fund and provide documentary evidence confirming the true nature of Kosovo for Rowan's personal understanding. No mention was made of rejoining the family or rebuilding their relationship. That bridge had been burned too thoroughly for easy repair. But the active hostility had been defused, replaced by a cautious neutrality. As they prepared to leave the following morning, Dominic took Rowan aside for a final conversation. "Your mother wasn't evil," he said unexpectedly. "She was loyal to her family, to Velasquez. That loyalty led her to actions I couldn't forgive, but the motivation itself was understandable." Rowan studied his father carefully. "Is that supposed to comfort me? It's meant to help you understand. Bianca loved you, not as part of deception, but genuinely. Whatever her agenda against me, her feelings for you were real." This acknowledgement, generous from a man Rowan had considered incapable of such understanding, hit him unexpectedly hard. "Thank you for saying that." Dominic nodded once, then extended his hand formally. After a moment's hesitation, Rowan shook it. As the jet prepared for departure, Cassidy embraced her brother briefly. "This doesn't have to be the end," she murmured. "Just a new beginning on honest terms." Watching the Montana property recede as they took off, Rowan felt an unfamiliar sense of closure. The vendetta that had driven him for years had been built on false premises. The father he had hated was more complex than he had allowed himself to recognize. Most significantly, he now faced the challenge of defining himself without opposition to Dominic as his core identity. Who was Rowan Vanguard when not crusading against the architect of deception? For the first time in years, he found himself genuinely curious to discover the answer. Chapter 9. Foundations of Power. 1 year after the Montana meeting, Sentinel Enterprises celebrated the opening of its new global headquarters in Denver, an architectural marvel of security and design that expressed Dominic Vanguard's philosophy in physical form. The building's stone and glass exterior projected transparency while concealing multiple layers of protection, its integration with the mountain landscape suggesting permanence and authority. Dominic stood on the executive floor, observing the final preparations for the evening's gala. At 51, he remained at the height of his powers, his company now valued at over $20 billion, his influence extending across governments and industries worldwide. Cassidy entered, impeccable in a tailored suit that signified her new role as Sentinel's chief strategy officer. At 23, she had transitioned from equestrian competition to corporate leadership, bringing her tactical intelligence to the company's expansion efforts. The Secretary of Defense confirmed his attendance, she reported, along with representatives from 7 foreign governments. Dominic nodded approval. "And security protocols?" "Triple-layered, as you specified. Preston has personally verified all systems." Their relationship had evolved from father-daughter to a partnership of equals, with Cassidy increasingly assuming responsibilities for Sentinel's most sensitive operations. Her loyalty remained absolute, her strategic thinking matching his own. "The guest list?" Dominic asked, though he already knew the answer. Rowan declined, as expected. Cassidy's expression revealed nothing, but he sent a message acknowledging the invitation. In the years since Montana, their relationship with Rowan had settled into a distant acknowledgement. He had ceased his campaign against Dominic, focusing instead on legitimate investigative journalism targeting actual corporate malfeasance. They maintained minimal contact, occasional messages, nothing more. His latest exposé on military contractor fraud was quite thorough, Cassidy noted. The Pentagon has opened 3 investigations based on his reporting. Dominic's expression remained neutral. He's found his purpose. That's sufficient. The restoration of Rowan's education fund had been Dominic's only concession. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness for the years of betrayal. The biological revelation had changed nothing in Dominic's assessment. Rowan had made his choices repeatedly, and consequences remained absolute. As evening approached, guests began arriving for the gala. Political figures, military leaders, technology innovators. Sentinel had positioned itself at the intersection of security and artificial intelligence, with the Prometheus system now deployed by 12 governments worldwide. Dominic moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his charisma calibrated precisely for each interaction. These social performances were tactical necessities, opportunities to strengthen alliances and assess potential threats. Midway through the evening, Preston approached discreetly. "Sir, Diana Colburn has arrived." Unexpected, She wasn't on the confirmed list. Dominic showed no reaction. Location: upper terrace. Alone. Maintain distance surveillance. I'll handle it personally. He found Diana at the terrace railing, gazing out at Denver's glittering skyline. At 63, she remained elegant, her posture still reflecting her intelligence background. "This is quite the monument you've built," she said without turning. "Impressive by any standard. Thank you for the assessment." Dominic moved beside her, maintaining professional distance. "Your presence is unexpected." Diana smiled faintly. "I received an invitation. Cassidy's doing, I assume." "My daughter occasionally makes independent decisions." His tone revealed nothing about whether he approved. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of shared history between them. Finally, Diana spoke. "I'm retiring from consulting, moving to Portugal next month. A significant change. After 40 years in intelligence work, I'm ready for a different perspective." She turned to face him directly. "Before leaving, I wanted to close the circle. Acknowledge that you were right about Kosovo, even if your methods afterward were extreme." Dominic studied her carefully. "My methods matched the threat level. Always. Including with your son? Especially with him." Dominic's voice remained even. "Rowan made his choices repeatedly. The consequences were proportionate." Diana nodded, unsurprised. "You never forgive betrayal, do you? Not even from family." "Forgiveness is irrelevant. Actions have consequences. That's simply reality. A reality you've engineered quite effectively." Diana gestured toward the gathering below. "You've rebuilt everything, greater than before. I eliminated vulnerabilities and leveraged strengths. Basic strategy." Diana's laugh held genuine amusement. "There's nothing basic about what you've accomplished, Dominic. You destroyed everyone who betrayed you, while creating something more powerful from the ashes." Her assessment was accurate, though Dominic wouldn't acknowledge it directly. The destruction of his former life had enabled the creation of something far more secure. A company, a fortress, a legacy built on absolute loyalty and strategic brilliance. "Will you see Rowan before you leave the country?" he asked, changing the subject. "I have. Last week in Washington." Diana's expression softened slightly. "He's finding his way, building a life without the vendetta that defined him for so long." "Good." Dominic meant it, not from forgiveness, but from practical assessment. Rowan focused on legitimate journalism rather than personal revenge was a neutralized threat. As Diana prepared to leave, she offered a final observation. "You know, for someone who claims emotions are irrelevant, you've spent an extraordinary amount of energy responding to betrayal. One might almost call it passion." Dominic's smile was slight but genuine. "Strategy isn't emotionless, Diana. It's about channeling emotion into effective action rather than allowing it to dictate response. A distinction without a difference, perhaps." She extended her hand formally. "Goodbye, Dominic. I doubt we'll meet again." After she departed, Dominic remained on the terrace briefly, reflecting on the journey from the Nashville estate to this moment. Every step had been calculated, every response measured and effective. Those who had betrayed him had been systematically destroyed, Bianca dead in prison, Hudson Reeves serving his sentence in obscurity, Velasquez eliminated permanently. Only Rowan remained, and he had been neutralized rather than destroyed, a practical decision rather than a merciful one. The boy posed no further threat, and his talents were better channeled into legitimate pursuits than wasted in pointless opposition. Cassidy joined him at the railing. Diana's departure went well. Yes. Final closure on Kosovo. Dominic turned to his daughter, noting her perfect poise, her strategic mind, so like his own. "You invited her." It wasn't a question, but Cassidy nodded confirmation. Loose ends are vulnerabilities. Her acknowledgement of the truth completes the narrative shift. Dominic felt a surge of genuine pride. Cassidy understood his principles completely, anticipated his strategic concerns, and acted accordingly. She was his true legacy, not the buildings or the billions, but the continuation of his uncompromising approach to loyalty and consequence. "The secretary is looking for you," she added. "Something about the Southeast Asia deployment." "I'll handle it." Dominic straightened his already impeccable suit. Manage things here. As he rejoined the gala, moving with purpose toward the Secretary of Defense, Dominic reflected on the stillness that had guided him through the family's destruction and his subsequent rebuilding. That perfect clarity remained his constant companion. The ability to see situations precisely, to respond with exact proportion, to eliminate threats permanently. Those who had betrayed him had discovered the consequences of their choices. Those who maintained loyalty, like Cassidy, enjoyed the protection and prosperity of his newly fortified world. The architecture of his life was now unassailable, built on foundations of power, precision, and absolute consequence. 2 months after the gala, Dominic received intelligence that Bianca had arranged one final gesture before her death. A sealed package had been delivered to Rowan, with instructions to open it on the anniversary of her passing. Preston delivered this information during their morning briefing at the Colorado estate. Contents unknown, but security scans showed documents and what appears to be digital storage. Dominic absorbed this without visible reaction. Location: Rowan's apartment in New York. He's scheduled to return from assignment in 3 days. The potential threat assessment was automatic. Bianca's final communication could contain new allegations, previously unknown evidence, or simply personal vindictiveness. Whatever its contents, Dominic needed to know before Rowan accessed it. Retrieve it, he instructed. Full containment protocols. 3 hours later, the package was in Sentinel's secure laboratory, undergoing careful examination. The contents proved illuminating. Bianca's personal journals spanning 25 years, along with a thumb drive containing recorded conversations and a letter addressed to Rowan. Dominic reviewed everything methodically. The journals documented Bianca's relationship with Velasquez from their first meeting through her infiltration of Dominic's life. Most significantly, they revealed that Cassidy's conception had been deliberate, a calculated decision to secure Bianca's position in Dominic's world while providing a sibling bond for Rowan. The letter to Rowan acknowledged the truth about Kosovo and Velasquez, but urged him to move forward rather than continuing a feudal vendetta. Bianca's final message to her son was surprisingly pragmatic. What's done is done. Your father, Dominic, will never be brought down by direct opposition. He's too strategic, too thorough. The best revenge is living well, building something he can't touch or control. Find your own path, Rowan. That's the only victory possible now. After completing his review, Dominic instructed Preston to return the package to Rowan's apartment with no evidence of interference. The contents posed no operational threat, merely the final reflections of a woman who had finally accepted the futility of her decades-long campaign. One crucial piece of information remained his alone: Cassidy's deliberate conception as part of Bianca's infiltration strategy. That knowledge would serve no productive purpose if shared. His daughter's loyalty was absolute, her identity firmly established as a strategic partner. Disrupting that certainty would benefit no one. 6 months later, Dominic received a message from Rowan, the first direct communication since Montana. It was brief and professional. Taking a position with Reuters in London. International Investigative Unit. Thought you should know. Dominic's response was equally concise. Noted, the position suits your abilities. No reconciliation was offered or expected. The distant acknowledgement was sufficient. A neutralized threat remaining neutralized, each pursuing their separate paths without unnecessary conflict. That evening, Dominic and Cassidy reviewed plans for Sentinel's next expansion, a series of security installations across Southeast Asia that would further extend their global influence. The partnership between father and daughter had reached its full potential, with Cassidy increasingly taking the lead on strategic initiatives while Dominic focused on government relationships. The Singapore facility will be operational by third quarter, she noted, highlighting key points in the presentation. Bangkok follows 6 months later. Dominic nodded approval. And the proprietary AI integration? Exclusive to our systems. The patents are locked down completely. Their working relationship was seamless. Two strategic minds operating from the same principles, the same uncompromising standards. Cassidy had learned every lesson Dominic had to teach about loyalty, consequence, and strategic response. As they concluded the review, Cassidy asked about Rowan's London position. Will it affect our European operations? No. His focus is corporate finance, not security technology. Dominic's assessment was clinical. The distance is beneficial for all parties. Cassidy accepted this without comment. Like her father, she had moved forward without looking back, treating past betrayals as closed chapters rather than ongoing concerns. The Vanguard capacity for compartmentalization was absolute. Later that night, Dominic stood at the window of his Colorado estate, looking out over the mountains illuminated by moonlight. The stillness within him remained perfect, a clarity of purpose and principle that had guided him through family betrayal, professional challenges, and strategic rebuilding. Those who had betrayed him had paid the full price for their decisions. Bianca had died in prison, her decades-long deception exposed and neutralized. Hudson Reeves would spend the rest of his productive years incarcerated. Velasquez had been permanently eliminated. Rowan had been effectively exiled, permitted to exist, but never again to be family. Only Cassidy remained, her loyalty rewarded with partnership, wealth, and influence. She was the future of what he had built, the continuation of his uncompromising approach to consequence and strategic precision. The architect had lost his original structure, but had built something far more impressive from its ruins. The new foundation was unshakable, constructed from perfect understanding of loyalty's value and betrayal's cost. Those who crossed Dominic Vanguard discovered an immutable truth. He never forgave, never forgot, and never failed to extract the full measure of consequence. As dawn approached, Dominic reviewed the day's agenda. Meetings with defense contractors, calls with foreign intelligence agencies, strategic planning with Cassidy. The empire continued its expansion, its foundation secure, its architect vigilant against any new threats. The family that had betrayed him was destroyed, scattered, or remade in his image. The vengeance had been complete, proportionate, and absolutely effective. Dominic Vanguard had emerged victorious, not through emotional outbursts or impulsive retaliation, but through strategic brilliance and unwavering principle. In the end, that was his true legacy. The demonstration that betrayal never went unpunished, loyalty never unrewarded, and consequences were always, inevitably, absolute. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.